Who on earth could have predicted that my blind date would turn out to be my former high school homeroom teacher who ruthlessly crushed my early romance, Mrs. Suo? And what is even more utterly mind-blowing is that a few months down the line, I'd have her pinned down while whispering those exact words to her. All right, dear aunt, I hear you loud and clear. I'll actually go through with the date, okay? The prospective match is a 26-year-old educator who boasts a personal vehicle, her own apartment, and a secured government tenure. Her family has been aggressively pressuring her, which is the sole reason she's even entertaining blind dates. Her profile is undeniably top tier on paper, so checking out the situation certainly wouldn't be a waste of my time. How the hell can it possibly be him? My absolute nightmare of a high school teacher, Miss Isu Wan-an, Lin Shun. You can't even successfully pick the correct answer out of a basic 4-option multiple choice question. Yet you genuinely expect to magically locate your perfect soulmate among 1.4 billion people. Keep your hands off romance during high school because the quality is guaranteed to be pure garbage. So wait until university to find the one you'll grow old with. She remains every bit as breathtakingly gorgeous as she was back in the day. Her silky jet black tresses cascade flawlessly over her elegant shoulders, accentuated by an incredibly subtle, sophisticated touch of makeup. Her flawless complexion practically radiates a brilliant porcelain glow under the intense sunlight, while her exceptionally slender waist and strikingly long legs are completely eye-catching. She matches the pristine image preserved in my memory down to the absolute millimeter. Well, Ms. Usu, how on earth are you still single and completely unclaimed? Right back at you. It's not like student Lin Shun's premature high school romance yielded any successful results either, right? Well, we certainly have to credit Ms. Su's hyper-aggressive lectures and constant intervention back then for that. I can only assume the current generation of students is infinitely more chaotic to manage, right? After all, you aren't exactly getting any younger. In absolute reality, she doesn't look ancient in the slightest. Her visual tier remains completely elite and flawlessly immune to the passage of time. Well, I definitely owe that to student Lin Shen's incredibly obedient and cooperative demeanor back in the day. Ever since dealing with your chaotic ass, I permanently stripped myself of any desire to be a homeroom teacher ever again. Phenomenal. Every single unhinged lecture I was forced to endure back then, and every single absolute debt of punishment I paid, will officially be repaid to her piece by piece with interest. Now that our little trip down memory lane is officially concluded, let's pivot directly to discussing some highly sensitive topics. Ms. Su's word on the street is that your family is aggressively pressuring you to tie the knot as well. Why don't the two of us just skip the drama and settle down together? At the very least, we already possess an absolute meticulous understanding of each other's deepest backgrounds. Student Lin Shun, I happen to be your senior by 4 entire years, so I'll politely decline to squander your prime youth and vibrant years. Look at that as expected of an elite literature teacher. Even her method of rejecting a man is so poetically sophisticated and uniquely refined. Oh, I don't harbor a single shred of complaints regarding that. I happen to possess a massive preference for older women, especially the ones with a fully matured corporate benefits package. Lest you forget, we once maintained a strict teacher-student dynamic. Student Lin Shun should know by now that there's a highly relevant saying, a wise rabbit never devours the grass around its own burrow. Well, what a fascinating coincidence. I happen to be an incredibly lazy rabbit who hates searching far. Student Lin Shun, it appears your rebellious phase is lasting a remarkably long time, isn't it? Oh, it's nothing out of the ordinary. It still pales in comparison to the absolute marathon of Ms. Yusu's unbroken single streak. We haven't crossed paths in years, yet student Lin Shun's verbal agility and sarcasm have improved exponentially. You flatter me, I am deeply humbled. After all, this is entirely a direct result of Ms. Su's phenomenal mentorship. Suddenly, I noticed an absolute catastrophic ghost from my past walking straight into our radius. Oh, Ms. Su, I didn't expect to run into you here. Well, if it isn't my legendary, perennially frail and sickly physical education teacher from back in the day. Ha, and who exactly might this young man be? Why on earth do I feel like this kid's face looks incredibly familiar? I am Lin Shun. Wow, I almost completely failed to recognize you. Lin Shun. Tell me, did that scandalous high school romance of yours ever yield any actual long-term results? Listen to me speak and allow me to express my absolute gratitude to you. You literally possess a supernatural talent for aggressively targeting my most sensitive vulnerabilities. Ruining a perfectly fine holiday with such an unhinged intrusion is incredibly disrespectful. I'm genuinely curious if after all these consecutive years, that chronic condition where you instantly fall critically ill the second gym class starts, has finally been successfully cured or not. Oh, please. I actually ended up marrying your former English teacher, so I permanently surrendered every single one of my scheduled class periods directly to her. What exactly are you two doing hanging around here anyway? Why don't we officially wrap up our session for today? So. That works perfectly. Let's exchange WeChat contacts, Ms. Metsu. And regarding the specific proposal I laid out, make sure you analyze it thoroughly. The precise moment our digital contacts synchronized, we both got behind our respective wheels and commuted home. So how did it go? Break down the details. What is the overall verdict on your blind date? Is she breathtakingly gorgeous? Does she possess a vibrant, compatible personality? Ha ha ha. Even though although her age profile is slightly more advanced, mature women possess an elite capability to thoroughly pamper and cherish a man. Oh my goodness, this is a literal manifestation of pure cosmic destiny, isn't it? You two already comprehend each other's deepest backgrounds, so there's an established emotional foundation. An emotional foundation. You have absolutely no idea. Our underlying emotional foundation is deep enough to bury a man alive. Greetings, everyone! Starting today, I will be stepping in as your newly appointed interim homeroom teacher, Soo-won An. Moving forward, I will personally guide you all through this chaotic final semester of senior year. Our classroom dynamic was the absolute definition of a battleground among ordinary classes. Crammed to the brim with eccentric art majors, rowdy athletes, and chronic unbothered slackers. Man, looking back, it was actually an incredibly wild time. Lin Shun, it's your troublesome ass yet again, constantly disrupting the lesson or completely passing out at your desk. You are the literal blueprint for that problematic handful of students the faculty keeps warning me about. And solely because of our chaotic class. Miss Sisu completely shattered her sanity, tore her voice to shreds, and absolutely ran herself into the ground, until she was on the literal brink of a total mental collapse. Lin Shun, do you actually harbor a single genuine ambition in life? My absolute dream is to eventually become the grand principal of this entire academy, solely so I can personally approve a massive salary increase for Ms. Osui. Lin Shun, exactly how many years is it going to take you to successfully memorize this classic literature piece? Try next year. Next question, Zhao Shuli is a legendary contemporary Chinese writer. Belonging to which specific literary school? Student Lin Shun. What exactly did you write down as your official answer? The Custard School of Thought. Back in those days, I was the textbook definition of a toxic, hyper-rebellious teenager, while Soo-won An was a fiercely dedicated, fiercely protective educator with an absolute maternal instinct. And she was completely determined to lock horns with me until the bitter end, because I was chronically talking over her lectures with my desk mates. She forcefully shuffled my seating arrangement no less than 10 consecutive times. From the absolute north, southeast, and west corners of the room, to being relegated to the top, middle, and bottom lanes, my presence occupied every single square inch. Ultimately, I looked her straight in the eye and said, Mrs. Su, you should honestly stop burning your precious energy on this. I can striking up a legendary conversation with literally anyone you place me next to. As a final resort, she completely isolated me by the side of the main teacher's podium, carving out an exclusive VIP high-visibility execution seat just for me, and right there under her intense, unblinking surveillance. She successfully intercepted my secret, scandalous high school love letter. Word on the street was that young love-struck teenage couples would stealthily slip into the academy's dense woods after evening self-study for private rendezvous. Consequently, she made it her daily ritual to camp out in those woods just to corner my scandalous ass, subsequently rewarding me with a highly familiar mandatory VIP tour of the faculty office. She spent hours tirelessly trying to drill basic wisdom into my thick skull. Engaging in a premature romance is like cultivating a barren tree that blossoms but yields zero fruits. When I completely tuned her out, she pivoted to her classic mantra, keep your hands off romance during high school. The quality is pure garbage. Wait until university to locate a soulmate you can grow old with. I immediately fired back with a sarcastic counter question. Then did Miss Su successfully locate a soulmate in university to grow old with? She let out a heavy, defeated sigh. Lin Shun, you can't even pick the correct answer. Out of a basic 4-option multiple choice question, how can you possibly expect to magically pinpoint the perfect soulmate out of 1.4 billion people? I scoffed with absolute unshakable confidence because she is undeniably the one. Soo-won An rubbed her temples in complete exhaustion. Fine then, why don't you break it down for your teacher? What specific qualities do you even find so mesmerizing about her? I boasted, she's incredibly gentle, kind-hearted, breathtakingly gorgeous, and possesses an absolute top-tier body. Soo-won An's face immediately contorted into pure, unadulterated disbelief. Wow, it seems foolish teenage infatuation truly blinds a man's vision completely. Considering her massive 130-pound hulking physique, where on earth are your eyes pinpointing a top-tier body from? In absolute reality, Hime was our classroom's powerhouse shot-put athlete, boasting insanely built limbs paired with a completely simple, carefree mind. She also happened to be my lifelong childhood friend. The exact moment she discovered my alleged secret crush on her back then, she was so intensely ecstatic that she aggressively tackled me into a massive bear hug, almost completely crushing my soul out of existence right then and there. Lin Shun, show. To be honest, I harbor a massive amount of affection for your fine ass too. Realizing my thick skull was completely immune to her logical reasoning, Soo-won An swiftly pivoted her strategy to interrogating Hime directly. Engaging in a premature romance at this stage will never yield any actual long-term results. You are literally just investing your time into raising a future husband for someone else. But Hime's bizarre psychological wiring was entirely built different from ordinary human beings. Someone else's future husband. Ms. Su, now that you describe it that way, it actually sounds incredibly thrilling. Man, looking back, the historical chaos of my youth was truly too painful to recollect. After thoroughly completing my late-night bathroom routine, I assumed a maximum comfort position and collapsed directly onto my mattress, swiftly tapping open Suan-an's private WeChat profile. Her avatar was still that unchanging ancient scenic landscape photo she's had for a century, and when I clicked into her personal moments feed, it was a literal barren desert of absolute emptiness. I can't believe that in this hyper-connected modern era, human beings who post zero social updates still exist. These specific individuals are undeniably the absolute most terrifying entities on Earth. Their textbook motto is literally, I refuse to miss a single second of your public life. But you don't stand a ghost of a chance of discovering a single detail about mine. I casually fired off a digital message, hey Miss Osu, what exactly are you up to right now? I waited for an absolute eternity, but there was zero digital response. To kill the burning time, I booted up a mobile gaming app for a quick ranked match, only to be immediately greeted by, you have been slain, your turret has been destroyed, shut down, and a flashing defeat screen, a catastrophic 5-game losing streak. My sanity was slipping and I was getting incredibly furious. Some individuals are out here drifting through the streets in sports cars at midnight. Some are intimately watching the pitch black ocean waves under the stars. While my 20-something-year-old ass is getting ruthlessly flamed by an elementary school kid for being absolute trash. If I'm already this much of a clown in a video game, why the hell am I still not the choice of her heart? My mind suddenly drifted back to high school when I used to sneakily play games underneath my desk, only to be violently caught red-handed by Suwanan. She systematically confiscated my phone, placed it face up right on the main teacher's podium, and forcefully commanded the entire classroom of peers to watch in real time. Exactly how my character was brutally massacred over and over again, ruthlessly flamed by my online teammates, and systematically reported for absolute griefing. I've been grinding this exact title for 4 consecutive years, yet I can't even breach the diamond tier. Standing here today, I finally deciphered the cosmic reality of why this specific rank is universally designated as the eternal diamond bracket. An absolute zero-tier garbage player, yet entirely addicted to the grind. The more my mind fixated on it, the more furious I became over Suwanan's ongoing silence on WeChat. I aggressively tapped open the chat interface and fired off a message, hey Ms. Josu, is replying to a basic text message punishable by life imprisonment under your curriculum set. If you're not going to utilize that smartphone, you might as well trade it in for a cheap stainless steel basin. Still zero digital signs of life. Did the high school principal forcefully confiscate your mobile device, Ms. Usu? Thinking back, Suwan-an's tactics for confiscating our smartphones during class periods could honestly be described as an absolute masterclass in ruthless calculated manipulation. She casually told us that our English pronunciation was completely atrocious, and then explicitly commanded the entire classroom to recite, hey Siri. The very next second, a chaotic chorus of automated digital voices chirped, I'm listening. Just tell me how incredibly cunning and devious can a single human being possibly be. Suddenly, my device vibrated with an incoming notification, my deepest apologies. I was occupied with a sudden matter just now and didn't check my screen. Immediately following that, a separate notification popped up on my interface, originating from my former high school classmate Xu Wenwen. Lin Shun, make absolutely sure you show up on time tomorrow morning. Holy crap, I almost completely blanked on the fact that tomorrow is his official wedding day, and his bride happens to be our former high school academic representative. Wait, there's more. The official marriage witness is none other than our legendary homeroom teacher, Ms. Su. These two complete tricksters not only successfully hid their illicit high school romance and made it to the altar, but they possessed the absolute audacity to invite their executioner of a teacher to bless the union. I genuinely want to hit them with a single-handed sarcastic round of applause for that unhinged play. Right at that microsecond, my biological mother violently slammed open my bedroom door, her face radiating an absolutely uncontrollable ecstatic grin. Kao Chow, your dear aunt literally just dialed my number a moment ago. She claimed that today's blind date candidate harbors an exceptionally phenomenal impression of you. An exceptionally phenomenal impression. Then, who the hell was the exact person who just looked me in the eye and explicitly stated she declined to squander my prime youth and vibrant years? It appears my mother completely fails to comprehend the complex coded vocabulary of a literature teacher. Your aunt specifically detailed that. One of the girl's elite parents is a highly esteemed scientific researcher, while the other is a distinguished university professor. And the young lady herself has already been officially decorated as an exemplary elite educator. This is a certified top-tier aristocratic lineage of pure academic royalty. It aligns absolutely flawlessly with our family background. Ha ha ha, I slowly massaged my throbbing temples while staring back at my mother. who looked ready to forcefully demand a grandchild from me this exact second. I let out a completely defeated, helpless sigh and interrogated her. An exemplary educator from a pure lineage of academic royalty, matched up with a certified trust fund brat from a third-rate diploma mill whose family just hit the lottery. Mom, from what exact parallel universe are your eyes pinpointing a flawless alignment? There was zero lie in my words. My family was a textbook blueprint of overnight wealthy peasants hitting the absolute jackpot. We possessed a severe deficit in sophisticated culture, but we owned an absolute mountain of real estate properties. Lin Shun, what the hell do you mean? A trust fund brat from a diploma mill is universally rebranded as a prestigious high society international bachelor. Yup, my mother completely comprehends the exact science of fabricating a flawless public image. My biological mother aggressively continued her non-stop lecture, listen to what your dear aunt said. This specific child was actually raised by her maternal aunt ever since her early childhood. And right now, that maternal aunt's health condition is severely deteriorating. So she is thoroughly panicking over securing her ultimate life partner. From my perspective, this elite young Miss Isu looks absolutely exceptional. You better unlock your maximum potential and make your mother proud for once. Honestly, I desperately desired to unlock my maximum potential and make her proud. But when it came to the absolute reality of Suwanan's true family background, I was previously completely 100% in the dark. After executing a monumental effort to finally eject my mother from my bedroom, I aggressively snatched my smartphone and fired off another targeted WeChat message to Suwanan. Hey Ms. Su, word on the street is that you harbor an exceptionally phenomenal impression of me. An absolute eternity evaporated in total silence, before her digital response finally materialized on my interface. I have always maintained an exceptionally phenomenal impression of student Lin Shen's troublesome ass. I violently rolled my eyes at the screen. Leave it to an elite literature teacher to execute a sarcastic counterattack with absolute microscopic precision. Miss Isu, my vehicle's license plate happens to hit a traffic restriction block tomorrow morning. I caught wind that you are also commuting over to attend Xu Wenwen's wedding celebration. So would it be possible for you to swing by and give my stranded self a ride? The entire story regarding the license plate restriction block was an absolute fabrication. But my desperate urge to force her into picking me up was 100% genuine. I swiftly dropped a digital pin of my exact location into Suwanan's chat window, to which she casually replied, sure thing. I clutched my comforter like an ecstatic lunatic rolling across my mattress in pure joy. The following morning, I slept soundly until the sun was blazing high in the sky. Suwan arrived precisely on the dot, parking her vehicle right beneath my apartment building. She was draped in an incredibly elegant coffee-colored trench coat, the lower hemline of the fabric dancing subtly against the morning breeze, teasingly revealing a flawless porcelain-white sliver of her calves. She stood gracefully leaning against the side of her car with an intensely mesmerizing, gentle smile dancing in her eyes. Her inherently warm, jade-like ethereal aura was magnified tenfold, making her an absolute visual masterpiece to behold. The exact second she spotted my presence emerging from the building, she elegantly raised her hand and gestured toward me, the graceful curve of her lips arching upward once again into a flawless smile. I am utterly forced to admit that this precise cinematic snapshot struck a massive chord deep within my soul. I am truly an absolute helpless sucker for elite visual aesthetics. She violently pierced right through my defenses and hyper-targeted my emotional sweet spot. I swiftly climbed inside Ms. Su's private vehicle, only to discover that the interior layout was the absolute definition of a clean bone stock factory setup. There wasn't even a single decorative charm or custom accessory hanging anywhere from the mirror. I felt a sudden wave of genuine astonishment washing over me. Don't ordinary modern women universally obsess over transforming their car cabins into a hyper-customized, wildly over-decorated aesthetic wonderland? Ms. Su, don't you harbor a subtle feeling that this generic factory interior layout doesn't exactly align with your sophisticated elite aura? I finally crossed the threshold of my curiosity and forced the question out of my mouth. Oh really? Then what specific model perfectly aligns with my aura? A Nissan GT-R. She subtly tilted her head toward my direction, her gaze radiating a dangerously playful vibe. Or perhaps a Porsche 911. An absolutely breathtaking sleek supercar paired with a pure jade tier visual aesthetic. Just conceptualizing that combination is completely mind-blowing. Student Lin Shen, as a dedicated public educator, my absolute primary directive is to remain low-key. Suwanan sharply kept me in check. But this layout is honestly a bit too excessively low-key, don't you think? It literally triggers a sudden illusion that I'm riding inside a generic rideshare vehicle. The chaotic energy at the grand wedding venue was intensely vibrant and buzzing, effectively morphing into an absolute massive high school reunion gala. Whoa, look who it is, Lin Shen. How on earth did you manage to arrive at the venue side by side with Miss Suos? A tight cluster of my former classmates enthusiastically fired off greetings. Oh, I simply crossed paths with Ms. Su entirely by coincidence along the commute and successfully hitched a ride in her car. I casually flashed a smooth smile and offered a quick explanation. Ms. Su, please come secure an elite seat at our table. Several classmates enthusiastically ushered Suwan-an over to the premium seating zone. Hey, Lin Shen, why don't you take a seat right next to your former soulmate girlfriend? An old peer from the side teasingly bantered with me, while simultaneously stepping aside to vacate a prime seating spot for my arrival. And sitting directly adjacent to that designated spot was none other than He-Mei. Having not laid eyes on her for several consecutive years, that formerly hulking hyper-athletic, sunshine-obsessed tomboy girl had somehow completely slimmed us down into an absolute bombshell silhouette with dangerous curves. She was sporting a glorious head of long cascading wavy tresses, which honestly delivered an absolute shocking twist to my system. You guys better cease broadcasting these complete unhinged fabrications right this second. She aggressively directed a threatening glare toward the instigator sitting next to her. I offered zero resistance and smoothly slid right down into the designated seat. Come on, look at the facts. Both you and Lin Shun are currently flying completely solo anyways. Why don't you two just skip the complex games and lock yourselves into a romantic partnership already? Pursuing a romantic relationship at our current age definitely doesn't classify as a premature scandal anymore. So even our legendary Ms. Yusu won't possess the legal authority to police your actions. If you two actually manage to manifest a successful relationship, you can forcefully recruit Ms. Su to serve as your official marriage witness as well. Don't you agree with that master plan, Ms. Su? The surrounding classmates seamlessly tossed lines back and forth, relentlessly teasing us in unison. Suwan-an merely let out a highly subtle, elegant chuckle without offering a concrete response. Suddenly, the grand wedding host officially requested the marriage witness to step forward and deliver the ceremonial speech. Her high heels clicked gracefully against the floorboards as she elegantly navigated her path toward the illuminated stage. My eyes were completely locked onto Suwan-an as she commanded the spotlight, flaunting an imposing height and strikingly long legs. A highly elegant, faint smile dancing effortlessly across the contours of her lips. She completely maintained her absolute composure as she raised the microphone to speak. Greetings, everyone. I happen to serve as the high school homeroom teacher for our two beautiful newlyweds. As every single soul present in this room is fully aware, high school strictly prohibits premature romances, which actually fills my heart with a profound sense of sheer panic and irony as I stand here today. It makes me harbor a sudden feeling that I was a completely incompetent homeroom teacher back then. The entire space beneath the stage instantly erupted into a massive wave of laughter paired with thunderous applause. However, stepping into the shoes of their formal educator, I possessed the absolute privilege to witness the entirety of their vibrant youthful prime. And I directly experienced the pure perfection of their vibrant youthful chapters together. Simultaneously, I celebrated the immense euphoria of their hard-earned university acceptances. To be completely transparent with everyone here, the absolute moment they first coupled up, I aggressively opposed it. Exactly as the two of them just detailed to you, they successfully ignited their monumental romantic marathon, right beneath my intense, unblinking surveillance. They happened to be a solitary pair among the countless romantic connections I ruthlessly tried to sabotage. However, they have weaponized their absolute marital bliss to deliver a violent, resounding slap straight to my face. And yet, I sincerely harbor a hope that I am subjected to this exact flavor of beautiful, blissful violence infinitely more in the future. Suwan-an's masterfully humorous and charismatic delivery instantly triggered another massive wave of thunderous applause across the room. I couldn't prevent a genuine, captivated smile from breaking across my lips either. Suddenly, He-Mei, who was occupying the seat directly adjacent to mine, abruptly broke her silence. Lin Shen, I have formulated a highly audacious, intrusive theory. I cast a deeply perplexed interrogative glance directly toward her. He-Mei leaned in close, pressing her lips against my ear after hesitating multiple times, stuttering, and whimpering before muttering in a hushed whisper, the specific individual you were obsessed with back in high school. It couldn't possibly have been her, right? She subtly gestured with her eyes toward Suwan-an on stage. My heart violently constricted inside my chest without warning. Panicking, I sharply retorted, "Your theory is undeniably profoundly intrusive." Back in those days, the entire student body was completely convinced I was harboring a secret crush on He-Mei. It all traces back to a solitary afternoon period, right in the middle of Suwan-an's literature lecture. A sudden torrent of rain began cascading violently outside the classroom window. The restless heart of an infatuated teenage boy is always a breeding ground for cheesy poetry. I aggressively scribbled a hyperdramatic emotional verse onto a scrap piece of paper. A heavy rain is falling outside the glass, yet your eyes refuse to lock onto mine. And my eyes completely refuse to acknowledge the storm. I love you, SWA, but a sudden gust of wind swept across the room forcefully, carrying the parchment straight onto the floorboards beneath He-Mei's desk. The exact second she retrieved and scanned the text, a vibrant crimson blush exploded across her cheeks. Lin Shun, so you've secretly been harboring a massive desperate crush on your big sister this entire time, huh? Unfortunately, her natural vocal volume was catastrophically loud, instantly capturing the hypervigilant attention of Su Wan-an. From that precise historical marker forward, the two of us were systematically targeted by Su Wan-an's relentless policing. Every single soul assumed the initials SWA stood for a scrambled version of Himei's name. In absolute reality, they couldn't have been more dead wrong. The literal first time my eyes ever beheld her ethereal presence was back when I was a mere 17-year-old boy. It's just that she doesn't retain a single microscopic memory of that encounter. From the absolute very beginning, I completely comprehended that this silent infatuation was nothing more than a tragic wordless pantomime. The exact second it was voiced aloud, it would instantly mutate into a definitive catastrophe. Consequently, regarding the burning reality of my profound love for her, it remained a sacred, deeply buried secret that I never possessed the courage to broadcast to the world. Harboring illicit romantic desires for my own educator was a complete failure of self-respect on my part, as well as an absolute profound degradation to her pristine reputation. Consequently, I resorted to executing chaotic acts of rebellion solely to hijack her attention, foolishly calculating that through these toxic antics she might permanently etch my existence into her memory with a deeper impression. Analyzing those memories standing here today, it truly was peak unadulterated immaturity, until the historical day of our grand graduation ceremony arrived. I summoned every single ounce of my remaining courage, fully intent on executing a total romantic confession, only to witness a wealthy high society man driving an ultra-luxury sports car, waiting right outside the main academy gates to pick her up. On that fateful afternoon, the only thing I managed to present to Su Wan-an was a simple bouquet of pristine white hyacinths. The boutique florist explicitly detailed that the flower's hidden message translates to a love that refuses to reveal itself. My face burned a violent crimson as I stammered out a solitary, pathetic line, "Ms. Su. In absolute reality, I don't harbor a single shred of actual hatred towards you." Shortly after that, my family pulled the strings to arrange for me to commute overseas for my university studies. Countless years have evaporated since that chapter, and I honestly never anticipated our lifelines would cross paths and crash into each other ever again. The exact second the wedding reception officially concluded, I smoothly executed my routine play and hitched a ride back inside Su Wan-an's private vehicle. The car's digital audio system was softly broadcasting a melancholy track. It was the iconic melody of the Gulf of Alaska. As the sorrowful chords drifted lazily through the cabin, my mind drifted to the actual Gulf of Alaska, globally recognized as one of the 9 most extraordinarily unique maritime gulfs on the planet. The vast oceanic surface explicitly exhibits 2 starkly contrasting color palettes, due to an insurmountable disparity in their molecular densities. These 2 individual bodies of water can physically never merge or become a singular entity. It mirrors certain deep, agonizing emotional attachments that are fundamentally destined never to unite, such as this entirely silent, wordless infatuation of mine. I fell into a state of profound absolute melancholy. Su Wan-an instantly perceived the sudden shift in my emotional frequency and gently initiated a wave of playful banter. I retain a distinct memory that student Lin Shun was universally celebrated for his silver-tongued verbal agility. How on earth did your troublesome ass mutate into this completely silent entity all of a sudden? I instantaneously swapped my emotional mask and let out an overdramatic sigh. Siam! I am merely mourning my tragic reality. If your hyper-aggressive policing hadn't forcefully crushed my high school romance back in the day, there is physically zero chance my life would be relegated to flying completely solo. As a pathetic single dog all the way into the present era, Su Wan-an was thoroughly amused by my ridiculous performance. Capitalizing on the opening, I immediately launched into a relentless high-stakes pursuit. Ms. Su, since the objective reality is that both of us are entirely unclaimed and unwanted, paired with the fact that our respective families are aggressively pressuring us to tie the knot, why don't we skip the entire courtship circus and just force a domestic partnership together? I confidently crossed my arms over my chest, casting an intensely playful, deeply amused smirk directly towards Su Wan-an's profile. My moral character is top tier. My personality is flawlessly elite. Ikishi Niche. I stand at a commanding 185 centimeters and I boast fully shredded abdominal muscles. I am a premium asset that you absolutely deserve to secure as your own. Are you 100% certain you decline to entertain a serious consideration of my offer? Su Wan-an locked her eyes onto mine before instantly breaking into an incredibly mesmerizing soft laugh. Student Lin Shun, you are still every bit as recklessly impulsive when navigating your romantic emotions. Are you truly not terrified of catastrophically repeating the exact same painful mistakes from your past? I flashed a look of absolute unshakable confidence. Wherever I crash and burn is precisely the exact spot I will conquer and rise again. Lin Shun, I am still officially your senior by 4 entire years. Well, what a flawless coincidence. I happened to be completely, utterly obsessed with the elite older women. An intense, deeply suffocating wave of awkward silence instantly blanketed the car cabin, until the heavy tension was violently shattered by the shrill, frantic ringing of her mobile device. The exact second she concluded the brief, highly urgent phone conversation, she aggressively slammed her foot onto the accelerator, steering the vehicle at breakneck speed straight toward the municipal hospital. It was only when we violently screeched to a halt at the emergency entrance that she suddenly realized I was still occupying the passenger seat. My deepest apologies, Lin Shun. I was consumed by absolute panic and completely blanked on your presence. I swiftly intervened with an urgent explanation. Please do absolutely not worry about my asset. Securing a human life is the absolute paramount priority right now. I hurriedly sprinted right behind her, tracking her footsteps deep into the clinical corridors of the medical center. An attending physician rushed forward, frantically breaking down a complex medical breakdown to Su Wan-an about how her relative's vital metrics had suddenly undergone a highly abnormal catastrophic spike. Su Wan-an collapsed heavily onto a plastic waiting chair positioned directly outside the operating theater. Burying her face inside her trembling hands, her posture completely radiating raw agony. Everything is guaranteed to be perfectly fine. Ms. Su, please do not allow your mind to fracture under the stress. I was completely at a loss regarding how to effectively soothe her shattered psyche, and could only vocalize these incredibly hollow, generic words of comfort. Su Wan-an let out a profoundly heavy, exhausted sigh. She slowly pivoted her head toward my direction, forcefully wrenching the corners of her lips upward to offer me a highly strained, reassuring smile. Even while trapped at the absolute epicenter of a personal crisis, she still prioritizes managing the emotional well-being of others. It appears she has fundamentally always been this extraordinarily gentle, profoundly selfless human being. Approximately 1 grueling hour slowly evaporated into nothingness, before the heavy automatic doors of the emergency room finally slid open. The lead surgeon emerged stating there is absolutely zero further cause for panic. The patient's internal equilibrium has successfully stabilized and returned to baseline parameters. An immense visible wave of pure relief finally washed over Su Wan-an's fragile shoulders. I quietly trailed behind her as we transitioned directly into the sterile environment of the recovery ward. Reclining quietly upon the elevated medical mattress was a remarkably elegant, sophisticated, middle-aged woman, though her complexion was entirely drained of color, presenting a sickly pallor. The absolute second her eyes locked onto my figure standing adjacent to Su Wan-an, a highly visible spark of profound astonishment flashed deep within her pupils. Xiao Wan, this exceptionally handsome young gentleman is... I instantly flashed a warm, respectful smile and offered a polite greeting. Salutations, auntie. My name is Lin Shun. Oh, figures. So you are the exact young man who engaged in that blind date session with our Xiao Wan just a couple of days ago. My goodness, you are truly a remarkably handsome specimen. Forcefully summoning every ounce of her remaining vitality, she reached out to firmly grasp my hand, scanning my physical features with an intensely approving, joyful smile. Auntie, the medical staff explicitly commanded that you must prioritize absolute tranquility and rest right now. Standing at the perimeter of the bed, Su Wan-an simply couldn't prevent herself from injecting a sharp reminder. Sigh, fine. I comprehend the situation completely. I will transition into resting this exact second. The elderly aunt puckered her lips into an incredibly adorable, aggrieved pout, before barking a cold, absolute command straight to Su Wan. The thermos is completely drained of hot water. Hurry up and fetch a fresh batch of boiling water for me. Su Wan-an let out a helpless chuckle before exiting the ward. Lin Shun, this is honestly the absolute first time in all these consecutive years that our Xiao Wan has ever escorted a young man to my bedside. It appears she harbors a massive amount of affection for your fine ass. The elderly aunt locked her gaze onto me, her face completely radiating pure ecstatic joy. But how on earth was I supposed to logically explain the reality that I had literally just hijacked a ride and tagged along entirely by coincidence? And then she playfully directed a mandatory command straight toward Su Wan-an. I desperately attempted to execute a smooth interrogation regarding her historical romantic archives. Sigh. She briefly dated a solitary partner back during her university years, but the connection completely fractured and they parted ways upon graduation. Shortly after that chapter, I was struck by a catastrophic uremia diagnosis and underwent a high-stakes kidney transplant. That fiercely devoted child subsequently sacrificed every single shred of her personal time to focus entirely on nursing my frail body. In absolute reality, it was my own decaying health that severely compromised her prime years. When Xiao Wan was a mere teenager, her biological parents tragically perished in a sudden accident, so she has been raised exclusively beneath my roof ever since. She is fundamentally nothing less than my own flesh and blood daughter. I was instantaneously struck entirely speechless. I never in my wildest dreams could have anticipated that Su Wan'an's hidden history was so deeply heartbreaking and saturated with raw trauma. Lin Xiaowan is fundamentally an individual who harbors an incredibly complex internal world. She was forced to mature and understand the harsh realities of life ever since her early childhood. And that sheer level of self-sacrificing maturity is precisely what breaks my heart into pieces. Even though she locks her lips and refuses to broadcast her desires, I am completely aware that her soul intensely craves the security of a genuine family structure. Yeah. It fills my heart with pure euphoria that prior to permanently closing my eyes, I can witness Xiaowan establishing a home. Young man, I am humbly begging you to cherish and protect her with everything you possess, and inject a genuine sense of joy back into her life. Su Wan'an's maternal aunt firmly clutched my hand, her eyes entirely swimming with a heavy torrent of tears. A sudden wave of intense emotion violently stung the bridge of my nose, but I maintained a warm smile and nodded resolutely. I give you my absolute word, I will. Su Wan'an emerged back into the room, gripping the handle of the freshly filled hot water thermos, scanning our highly emotional faces with a completely perplexed expression. I simply felt utterly in love with Lin Shen's character and got completely carried away in our conversation. Alright, I am officially surrendering him back to your custody now. Lin Shen, the absolute microsecond you find an opening in your schedule, you must commute over to our home for a visit. I flashed a genuine, respectful smile and fired back, Prioritize accelerating your physical recovery, Auntie. The absolute second you are discharged, I will personally pay a formal visit to your residence. Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Flooding my soul with this level of pure joy instantly eradicates every single microscopic trace of my illness. Su Wan'an quietly escorted me out of the clinical corridors as we exited the hospital grounds. She maintained a deeply pensive, profoundly contemplative posture as she stared fixedly at my silhouette, remaining locked in a heavy silence for an exceptionally long duration. Lin Shen, I need to express my deepest gratitude for your actions today. Oh, come on, Miss Su, you are being far too formal. It was a mere effortless gesture on my part, nothing more. Back in the day, I inflicted a massive amount of chaotic trouble upon your life. Yet, I never even properly extended a formal apology to you. Reflecting on my history as an absolute unhinged rebel student, I honestly did nothing but constantly trigger her blood pressure. Su Wan'an's facial expression subtly shifted, a faint ripple of emotion crossing her features, as she softly vocalized, Lin Shen, in absolute reality, I am a profoundly boring, entirely mundane individual. I am significantly older than you, and I am fundamentally still your former high school educator. I simply couldn't prevent myself from sharply cutting her off mid-sentence. Ms. Su resorting to this specific line of defense to reject my advances is truly entirely unnecessary. Su Wan'an let out a highly subtle, elegant sigh. What I am trying to communicate is, if your asset truly doesn't harbor any resentment toward my older age, then perhaps we can officially initiate a trial relationship together. Zero resentment, absolute zero resentment. I frantically blurted out before instantaneously correcting my vocal delivery. What I meant to say is I am 100% willing and ecstatic. Hesitating for even a solitary microsecond would be an absolute profound disrespect to her statement, and my soul was utterly terrified that she might suddenly execute a strategic retraction. Even though I was fully conscious of the reality that she was merely doing this to grant her ailing relative absolute peace of mind, and even though I completely comprehended that she currently harbored zero genuine romantic affection toward my persona, I am fundamentally the exact breed of stubborn idiot who refuses to pivot until I violently crash straight into a brick wall. Furthermore, this was the literal ultimate goddess whom I had hopelessly worshipped for an eternity of years. Throughout the entirety of that monumental night, I was so overwhelmingly ecstatic that sleep became an absolute impossibility. Your granddaddy has finally shattered his streak of absolute pathetic loneliness. I simply couldn't suppress the desperate urge to broadcast this massive victory to my ultimate bro. He instantaneously fired back, what did your chaotic ass finally mutate into a literal stray dog? Go screw yourself. Your father has officially successfully locked down his absolute dream goddess. He replied, tragic simps are completely cursed to suffer for 10 consecutive lifetimes. I shot back, mind your own business. This specific chapter is absolute unadulterated true love. I could literally feel my inner romantic simp brain cells rapidly multiplying and taking full control of my sanity. By the arrival of the following morning, I felt an insatiable urge to consult an experienced veteran to farm some critical, strategic advice. For a historical, pure-blooded virgin solo survivor like myself, my actual tactical romance IQ was effectively sitting at absolute zero. I confidently marched down to the parking lot, fully prepared to fire up my engine, only to discover that my front wheel had been forcefully slapped with a heavy industrial tire lock. What the literal hell? Which absolute brain-dead clown had the audacity to pull a stunt like this? I was pacing around the perimeter of my vehicle in a state of pure unadulterated rage. until a remarkably familiar voice suddenly echoed through the concrete space, Lin Shun. Don't tell me this specific vehicle actually belongs to your troublesome ass. I sharply whipped my head upward, only to find none other than Hime standing there draped in a highly crisp official law enforcement uniform. I am forced to admit she actually looked remarkably professional and put together in that gear. Hime, since when did your aggressive ass enlist to become a municipal parking warden? You better not look me in the eye and declare that you were the one who locked my vehicle. Your vehicle was explicitly executing an illegal obstruction of a designated public roadway. She casually offered a textbook bureaucratic explanation. I was instantaneously rendered entirely speechless. You are truly the absolute pinnacle of professional integrity and devotion. Zero friendliness detected whatsoever. I flashed a heavily forced smile through my gritted teeth, entirely focused on concluding the mandatory fine payment. I will immediately coordinate with my team to unlock your vehicle. She stammered apologetically, flashing a deeply embarrassed, sheepish smile. But I'm in an absolute desperate rush to commute right now, sister. I let out a thoroughly defeated sigh. Where exactly are you heading? How about I just give your pathetic ass a direct lift? Consequently, I found myself riding shotgun inside an official police cruiser all the way to my best bro's residence. The exact second Nizi opened his front door, he was completely paralyzed with absolute shock. Holy freaking crap. Lin Shun, did your unhinged ass literally summon an official police cruiser as a standard rideshare? Cut the crap. Did your eyes register that female law enforcement officer? She happens to be an old high school classmate of mine. I offered a highly exhausted, blunt explanation. Nizi's predatory eyes instantaneously darted around in a highly mischievous, calculating circle. Damn, her visual aesthetics are honestly incredibly elite. That crisp uniform combined with that lethal silhouette, wow. That woman possesses the literal physical capability to effortlessly execute a combat takedown on 3 weaklings, exactly like you, simultaneously. I frantically dragged his hyper-imaginative, perverted ass straight inside the apartment before his thoughts could spiral further. The absolute moment I completed breaking down the reality of my recent life chapters to him, Nizi completely lost his remaining psychological composure. Are you freaking kidding me right now? So your absolute ultimate dream goddess is the exact female educator you spent your youth harboring a toxic secret crush on. It turns out your taste is fundamentally utterly obsessed with dominant older women. You need to aggressively execute a full-scale romantic assault immediately, bro. This dynamic is so unbelievably elite. The glaring issue is that she doesn't harbor an ounce of genuine romantic affection toward my persona. She only consented to this domestic partnership solely to grant her ailing relative absolute emotional peace of mind. I vocalized my thoughts, feeling a massive wave of pure, unadulterated discouragement washing over me. Furthermore, she historically occupied the position of my literal educator. She is an exceptionally dignified, highly traditional and moral individual. Nizi flashed a look of total unadulterated indifference. What kind of pathetic obstacle is that supposed to be? You are, objectives-wise, no longer occupying the status of her classroom student anymore. Is there some kind of federal legislation that explicitly criminalizes entering a romantic partnership with a former educator? Furthermore, Lin Shun, can you please summon an ounce of masculine spine for once in your life? Your mouth is constantly broadcasting high-tier silver-tongued confidence 24/7. Yet the exact second you enter the battlefield, you mutate into a total coward. Every single word he unleashed was an absolute, undeniable truth. I found myself completely, utterly powerless to formulate a single logical counter-argument. Fine then, what specific tactical blueprint am I supposed to execute? You need to forcefully conquer her entire soul, my brother. You must maintain absolute faith in your own physical charisma. Riz her up. Initiate an aggressive, proactive offensive. Prioritize orchestrating highly calculated, seemingly accidental moments of physical proximity and touch. With your specific level of elite visual aesthetics paired with that shredded physique, she will instantly collapse into submission. This is especially lethal against her specific archetype. An elite high society leftover woman who hasn't experienced the thrill of a romantic relationship in an eternity of years. Understood. Digesting your masterclass wisdom right now has officially saved me from reading 10 individual volumes of dating literature. In absolute reality, however, I possessed virtually zero structural opportunities to execute the blueprint. Aside from the sporadic occasions where I escorted Suwan An to the municipal medical center, her absolute favorite, most frequented sanctuary on the planet was the local public library. She would sit there cradling a massive, heavily dense volume of historical literature, completely, utterly intoxicated by the printed text. Meanwhile, I anxiously cycled through an endless rotation of generic joke anthologies to kill the time, until I ultimately surrendered, quietly unlocking my smartphone screen to launch a high-stakes mobile video game. The exact microsecond my squad initiated a critical teamfight, an abruptly low mesmerizing voice violently disrupted my entire gaming rhythm. Are you feeling completely bored out of your mind? I raised my gaze only to collide straight into her deeply profound pitch black eyes. I instinctively shoved my smartphone behind my back, desperately trying to conceal it. No way. Even though an eternity of years had passed, the absolute primal terror of being caught red-handed by your homeroom teacher instantly assaulted my nervous system all over again. Back in the day, whenever Suwan-an caught me covertly playing mobile games during her lectures, she would execute a psychologically sadistic move by placing my device directly onto the teacher's podium, propping the screen up to face me directly. I was subsequently forced to watch in absolute helpless agony as my enraged teammates violently flamed my existence in the chat, witnessing my entire squad get brutally wiped out in a total team wipe, and watching my account get mass reported and permanently banned from competitive play. But hold on though, I officially graduated ages ago, so what the literal hell am I still terrified of? Yeah, it is actually a microscopic bit monotonous. What kind of couple spends their entire romantic dating life continuously marinating inside a public library? Furthermore, I am currently harboring a secret romantic agenda, so a dull environment like this is pure torment. Right then and there, I resolutely vowed to launch a proactive, aggressive offensive. A brand new massive amusement park had recently celebrated its grand opening near our residential area. I explicitly locks in a rendezvous with Suwan to go out and hit the town together. The universal lore claims that women are utterly powerless against a man styled in a crisp dress shirt, consequently prioritizing elite style over survival temperature. I equipped nothing more than a dangerously thin slate gray button-up shirt as my top layer. The absolute microsecond I stepped outside the sub-zero wind violently froze my consciousness into a state of pure icy clarity. While standing right outside the cafe near the amusement park gates, Suwan-an elegantly gestured toward the menu board, inquiring what specific beverage I desired to order. I instinctively blurted out, "An iced Americano." Her eyebrows instantly knitted together in disapproval, ordering an iced beverage in the absolute dead of winter. We hot-blooded youth are fundamentally required to inject ice into our veins at all times to maintain peak performance. I offered a completely straight-faced pseudo-scientific justification. She let out a soft chuckle, scanning my shivering physique with a highly amused gaze. "Well then, mister, I am merely executing a physical internal warming procedure." Ultimately forced to compromise under her gaze, I settled for a scalding hot latte. My right hand was safely securing the warmth of the coffee cup, but my entirely exposed left hand was rapidly mutating into a block of ice in the biting atmosphere. The exact millisecond my feet registered our 100th consecutive stride together, I expertly capitalized on her momentary lapse in vigilance, swiftly plunging my freezing hand straight into the deep pocket of Suwan-an's heavy winter overcoat. "Ms. Su, I have logically deduced that the fabric of your outerwear provides a significantly superior thermal environment." She froze in absolute microscopic shock for a brief moment. Yet a violent, brilliant crimson blush instantaneously surged all the way to the tip of her earlobes. With my hand firmly locked inside her pocket, we synchronized our slow pace across the pavement. She deliberately adjusted her stride to perfectly mirror mine, navigating our path step by step through the dense, bustling crowds of the park. Unable to suppress my burning curiosity any longer, I lowered my vocal pitch and muttered, "Hey Ms. Back when your asset used to go out on romantic dates with your historical ex-boyfriend, did the two of you literally never engage in simple hand-holding?" So I formally invited Suwan-an to go experience the attractions with me. She slowly guided her own hand down into the depths of that exact same pocket, allowing me to swiftly and decisively lock my fingers between hers, capturing her hand entirely. The radiant, comforting warmth from her palm instantaneously transferred directly onto my skin, causing my frozen hand to rapidly defrost and grow pleasantly warm. While my racing heart experienced the exact same sensation, she knit her gorgeous eyebrows together in a subtle frown. "How on earth did your hand become this devastatingly freezing? Let us reschedule this outdoor excursion for another calendar date. The temperature today is far too brutal, making it exceptionally easy to contract a severe cold." Absolutely no way I finally managed to secure a premium tactical opportunity. So how could I possibly allow it to slip through my fingers this easily? In that case, let us at least go experience the bungee jumping platform. We can just complete that single attraction and call it a day. Executing a tandem bungee jump explicitly mandates that the two participants must be tightly locked in a total embrace. My true strategic intent was to orchestrate a highly intimate physical proximity between us. Furthermore, my soul was deeply consumed by a burning curiosity to find out if an extreme high adrenaline sport could finally force Suwan-an to completely lose her rigid emotional composure. She historically always maintains a perfectly detached, effortlessly serene demeanor, exhibiting nothing but a flawlessly gentle, unshakable aura. That specific attraction is far too hazardous. We are pivoting to a significantly safer alternative. It was glaringly obvious that she was harboring a massive amount of internal trepidation. There is absolutely zero structural danger involved. The entire setup is reinforced with military-grade safety gear. I aggressively fired back a counter-argument. "Lin Shun, has your reckless brain truly never scanned the horrific media coverages regarding fatal bungee jumping malfunctions? Those tragic instances are nothing more than highly isolated statistical anomalies." Maintaining a firm, unyielding grip on her hand, I smoothly pulled her fragile silhouette directly into my immediate space, slightly tilting my head downward. Don't tell me my elite goddess is actually paralyzed with pure fear. She opened her lips, entirely caught in a state of visible hesitation, struggling to formulate a response. I stared intently at her intensely blushing complexion, and my heart violently skipped a beat, completely overwhelmed by her lethal visual charm. Summoning a wave of raw, unadulterated audacity, I tightly locked my arms around her waist, pulling her into my chest, before executing a lightning-fast, tender kiss directly upon her smooth forehead. I will safeguard your existence with my literal life. A violent crimson blush instantaneously exploded across her earlobes. It took her several consecutive seconds of psychological processing to finally compute what had just transpired. Lin Shun, where on earth did your unhinged ass acquire these toxic manipulative pickup tactics? I flashed a deeply mischievous wicked smirk and fired back. The ancient texts declare that when the student fails, the educator explicitly shares half of the blame, so you are fundamentally responsible for this monster, Ms. Wu Su. Ultimately, Ms. Su chose not to violate her own unspoken boundaries, consenting to accompany my frantic persona onto the extreme bungee platform. The precise millisecond we plunged from the high-altitude apex, an absolute terrifying weightlessness violently assaulted my consciousness. I was so thoroughly traumatized by the sheer adrenaline that I began howling and screaming like an absolute maniac, clutching her physical form with a desperate ironclad grip. Meanwhile, throughout the entire duration of the freefall, she surprisingly failed to emit a single acoustic sound. The exact second the crew hauled us back up to the platform, her face was entirely drained of color, presenting a sickly pallor, while a fine glassy layer of cold sweat was clearly visible across her forehead. Ms. Iyusu, are you physically alright? Do you actually suffer from a severe clinical phobia of heights? An intense wave of deep anxiety washed over me instantly, replaced by a massive dose of bitter regret for aggressively dragging her into experiencing such a high-stress attraction alongside me. I am perfectly fine, she softly murmured to console my panicked state, even though every single metric of her physical appearance screamed that she was in absolute distress. The heavy words her maternal aunt confided in me flashed violently back into my consciousness, the desperate plea to inject genuine happiness back into her heavily guarded soul. During that terrifying high-altitude freefall, virtually any ordinary human being would have broken down screaming at the top of their lungs. Yet she had endured the entire traumatic descent in absolute stone-cold silence. After a considerable amount of time had ticked away, Suwan-an successfully re-established her flawlessly calm everyday emotional poker face. Unable to suppress my burning curiosity any longer, the question finally burst forth from my lips. Ms. Su, what specific thoughts were actually racing through your mind during that extreme bungee drop? The corners of her lips twitched slightly upward, forcing a highly subtle distant smile. It was absolutely nothing of importance. I instinctively lowered my gaze in a heavy wave of pure defeat, lapsing into a brooding silence. There was undeniably a profound haunting thought locked inside her mind. Yet she deliberately chose to seal her lips and lock me out completely. Lin Shun, would it be possible for your asset to address me by my actual name from now on? She suddenly vocalized, shattering the heavy silence that enveloped us. Huh. Is maintaining the title of Ms. Mitsu not pristine enough for your liking? She let out a soft, highly self-deprecating chuckle. Whenever that specific title escapes your lips, I am hit with an overwhelming wave of sheer moral guilt. Pfft, alright then, Suwan-an, I cautiously attempted to enunciate her actual name for the first time, only to be hit with a wild sensation of committing an absolute treasonous crime against my former authority figure, intertwined with an incredibly addictive, intoxicating rush of raw adrenaline. She softly acknowledged my vocal shift. Let us officially initiate our commute back home. The atmospheric conditions today are far too brutal. She completely relaxed her tense facial features before adding that final remark. However, we had barely logged 2 consecutive steps across the pavement before our path was violently obstructed by a highly unexpected figure. What a remarkable twist of fate. It was none other than Suwan-an's legendary high society ex-boyfriend, a man meticulously draped in a flawless ultra-premium designer suit, completely exalting a cutthroat corporate elite aura. His predatory gaze slowly swept across my physical silhouette, unmistakably dripping with a heavy dosage of pure, unadulterated hostility. This was the exact elite ex-boyfriend of Suwan-an, whom I had historically witnessed waiting outside the main academy gates 4 entire years ago. Suwan-an responded with the ice-cold detachment. I retain a distinct memory that your asset loathes places of this nature. The corporate elite flashed a highly calculated, arrogant smirk. I am merely acting as an escort for my companion. Suwan-an indifferently shot back. Hey, my guy. This entire state-of-the-art amusement park happens to be an official asset of my family's conglomerate. Moving forward, feel free to drop my name to gain absolute VIP access whenever your asset desires to play. That arrogant bastard directed a profoundly condescending look down toward my feet, letting out a mocking chuckle, as he smoothly slid a premium embossed business card directly into the front pocket of my shirt. Suwan An's grip on my hand instantaneously tightened into an iron vice, and without granting him a single microsecond of eye contact, she aggressively dragged me away from the scene. I locked my lips, choosing to remain entirely silent, and she likewise maintained an absolute profoundly heavy absence of speech. Ultimately, it was my own restless persona that took the initiative to shatter the suffocating aura. Suwan An, what was the absolute root cause that forced your relationship to fracture and dissolve back in the day? In absolute reality, I witnessed him patrolling the academy grounds trying to track you down back then. His economic status and family pedigree are extraordinarily elite. Upon our graduation, he intensely despised the concept of my asset becoming a high school educator, desperately demanding that I transition into his family's massive conglomerate to serve as his auxiliary assistant. I completely refused to compromise, so our connection dissolved and we parted ways, she indifferently stated, maintaining a perfectly poised, unbothered facial expression. I smoothly retrieved that premium embossed business card from my front pocket. Lee Wenshu, general manager of the mega conglomerate Wanhee Group. The legendary Wanhee Group, an absolute titan ranked comfortably within the top 100 corporate empires nationwide. I distinctly recall that the supreme chairman of the board likewise shares the exact surname of Lee, which logically deduces that this bastard is the direct crown prince heir of the entire Wanhee dynasty. Suwan An made zero structural effort to deny my deduction, if their high-stakes romance had managed to survive without breaking apart back in the day. It is highly probable that Suwan An would currently be ruling high society as a pampered ultra-wealthy billionaire wife. Does your soul truly never experience a single microscopic ounce of regret? Regret regarding what specific detail? Dissolving that relationship and choosing to dedicate your life to being a standard educator. Suwan An let out a soft, incredibly elegant chuckle, gently shaking her head from side to side. Absolutely zero regret. She briefly paused mid-sentence, before deliberately adding a final conclusive remark. During that specific chapter of our youth, neither of us possessed a fiercely unwavering determination to choose one another, so there is fundamentally zero structural regret or lingering trauma to be chained to. Hearing her words caused the heavy knots of anxiety inside my chest to slightly loosen up, yet I simply couldn't suppress the urge to let out a highly petty quiet complaint. But my internal emotional state is still currently radiating a massive amount of unhappiness. Suwan An subtly knit her gorgeous eyebrows together, shifting her focus onto my completely aggrieved pouting face. Your asset is experiencing what exactly? I sharply pivoted my head, locking my gaze directly into her deep, hypnotic pupils. Suwan An, I am explicitly broadcasting that your official boyfriend is currently drowning in pure jealousy. Suwan An simply couldn't prevent herself from instantly breaking into a dazzling, uninhibited laugh. In absolute reality, her natural laugh is devastatingly breathtaking. Student Lin Shen, I am fundamentally quite deficient in the tactical art of consoling a sensitive partner. So your asset is entirely free to instruct me on the next step. Exactly what kind of elite counteroffensive blueprint am I supposed to deploy next? How about executing a simple standard embrace that should be perfectly acceptable, correct? I stated, looking down intently into her soft eyes, and the exact next microsecond she extended her delicate arms, gently wrapping them around my waist. My entire heart instantaneously melted into pure unadulterated mush. Suwan An, the reality is that your asset looks completely, utterly magnificent whenever you break into a smile. I securely locked her physical silhouette tight against my chest, feeling an overwhelming wave of pure absolute contentment mixed with a deep aching tenderness for her past sacrifices. Suwan An, my soul's ultimate desire is to safeguard your happiness for an eternity of lifetimes. The absolute millisecond the official intelligence leaked that our two personas had successfully locked in a relationship, my biological mother completely lost her mind, spiraling into a state of pure ecstatic euphoria. Furthermore, Suwan An's maternal aunt's vital metrics had successfully maintained absolute medical stability recently, during the mandatory family banquet hosted right after the grand conclusion of the Lunar New Year. The parental figures from both sides immediately activated a hyper-aggressive mutual flattery mode. Oh my dear, the more I closely observe Shun Shun, the more deeply obsessed I become with his wonderful character. Her maternal aunt beamed. To confidently venture abroad all by himself for university at such a tender youthful age. What an incredibly ambitious, highly driven child. Her intense praise caused my seasoned face to flush with a heavy crimson blush. In absolute reality, my academic grades were simply too devastatingly trash, forcing me to flee overseas just to securely buy a generic university degree. My biological mother instantly piped up, "Oh please. How could he possibly compare to the absolute supreme excellence of our precious Xiao Wan? Whoa. An elite top-tier graduate from an incredibly prestigious Ivy League caliber university, and already recognized as an outstanding decorated educator at such a young age. The modern generation of students must be exceptionally chaotic and difficult to manage correct. Her daily professional workload must be profoundly exhausting and stressful. Her aunt let out a hearty, joyful chuckle. It is quite manageable, honestly, quite manageable. It was strictly during her initial year of entering the profession that she served as a head homeroom teacher. Back during that specific chapter, there happened to be an intensely rebellious, unhinged little punk who constantly caused her a massive amount of psychological torment, inflicting heavy waves of exhausting trouble upon her life for a considerable duration. Following that chaotic trial, she resolutely vowed to never occupy the head homeroom position ever again. So her current professional environment is actually perfectly fine. Hearing this caused my face to turn an even deeper, more violent shade of crimson. Regarding that specific troublesome, chaotic rebel punk her aunt was so vividly describing, it was structurally impossible for my guilty persona to not immediately self-identify as the culprit. Why don't you two independent youngsters head out and enjoy yourselves? Our elders thoughtfully suggested explicitly releasing us from the family gathering. It appears there is a massive firework display currently illuminating the outside sky, making it the absolute perfect opportunity for a romantic stroll. I promptly pushed myself up smoothly, handing the heavy winter overcoat to Suwan-an. Her lips were currently nursing a single piece of hard candy, causing her cheek to cutely puff outward, exuding an absolutely adorable aesthetic. It was highly probable that her soul was likewise feeling suffocated by the intense parental interrogation, prompting us to make our way down to the residential courtyard below. A group of nearby residents were actively launching spectacular fireworks into the atmosphere, blooming into brilliant luminous cascades across the pitch-black canvas of the night sky, creating an absolutely mesmerizing visual feast. Slightly further away, a handful of rowdy neighborhood kids were enthusiastically hurling pop snaps onto the concrete. Suwan-an stared intently at the glowing heavens, her consciousness seemingly drifting into a distant, vacant state, exuding a faint, deeply haunting aura of profound melancholy. Suddenly, a solitary pop snap shot across the pavement, violently exploding right beside her feet. The abrupt sound terrified her nervous system, forcing her to instinctively seek sanctuary straight inside my arms. I immediately capitalized on the moment, wrapping my hand securely around her waist to stabilize her form, gently tilting my head downward to lock my gaze directly into her wide eyes. She stood there radiating a breathtaking, flawlessly radiant beauty. Lin Shun, do you happen to harbor any specific wishes for the upcoming new year? Her complexion was heavily dusted with a gorgeous, delicate blush, as she tilted her face upward, inquiring softly. I bent my head lower, leaning in until my lips were positioned directly against the shell of her ear. My ultimate desire for this brand new year is for Suwan-an to experience unadulterated happiness every single day. I passionately wish for your beautiful soul to be flooded with pure joy 24/7. And I aggressively hope that you can gradually force yourself to fall a little bit deeper in love with me when you formulate your words in that specific manner. It completely implies that my existence is currently drowning in agonizing misery every single day. She subtly hoisted her elegant eyebrows, flashing a look of genuine perplexity. It isn't that your soul is actively radiating unhappiness, but it simultaneously feels like your asset is never experiencing raw, unadulterated euphoria either. It is an incredibly complex emotion to articulate with absolute precision, but I constantly perceive her internal state as being permanently anchored in a detached, tranquil baseline. Would your beautiful soul be entirely willing to confide in me? During that exact high-altitude bungee drop, what specific thoughts were actually torturing your mind? I cautiously navigated the query, executing a highly calculated emotional probe, because at the bare minimum during that catastrophic microsecond, her mental composure was visibly, undeniably fractured and deteriorating before my very eyes. Suwan-an's facial expression experienced a sudden profound ripple of heavy emotion. She raised her gaze to scan the luminescent moon suspended within the pitch-black heavens, before dropping her head, marinating in a suffocating heavy silence for an eternity before finally speaking. My biological parental figures historically perished inside an absolute nightmare of a fatal aviation disaster, right before they boarded that doomed aircraft. Their final lingering remarks were explicitly concerning how their students' examination papers had yet to be fully graded, vowing to squeeze out a few extra critical points for their class prior to the grand college entrance examination. The exact millisecond my physical form was plummeting from that high-altitude apex, my consciousness was consumed by a solitary question. When their own bodies were violently falling from an infinitely higher terrifying altitude, what did they experience? Was their final cognitive reality a state of absolute pure despair or unadulterated terror? An instantaneous, massive wave of crushing psychological guilt violently flooded straight into my soul. Why on earth did my reckless persona aggressively force her to endure that high-stress attraction with me? I am literally the absolute pinnacle of a brain-dead goddamn idiot. I am so incredibly, profoundly sorry. I never should have. It is fundamentally not your fault. Su Wan-an offered a highly tender, consoling smile while gently shaking her head. Yet the excruciating weight of my internal guilt remained entirely impossible to suppress or extinguish. My limited mind possessed zero capability to truly conceptualize the sheer magnitude of the trauma a fragile girl endures, when her entire world is shattered by the premature violent loss of both maternal and paternal figures. Her heart must have been completely, utterly lacerated by an eternity of agonizing grief. Yet I am catastrophically, profoundly deficient in the tactical art of deploying emotional comfort, completely paralyzed and clueless regarding how to formulate a single therapeutic sentence. I frantically locked my arms around her silhouette, executing a desperate, protective embrace. Letting out a heavy, deeply pained sigh, I muttered, Su Wan-an, Ngel. Exactly what celestial blueprint must I execute to inject real, unadulterated happiness back into your soul? She rested her weight completely against my chest. Yet she actively reversed the dynamic by smilingly consoling my panicked form. In absolute reality, I am incredibly content right now. My maternal aunt's vital metrics are continuously exhibiting an elite upward trajectory. My professional career is proceeding flawlessly without a single disturbance. And my everyday existence is anchored in absolute pristine tranquility. Is that truly the absolute entirety of the list? I demanded, staring intensely into her pupils. The exact microsecond our gazes locked together in a high-stakes, unyielding stare. Her fiercely guarded composure fractured, revealing a highly delicate, intensely shy demeanor. And there is the undeniable presence of your asset, she softly confessed, lowering her head until her gaze was completely fixed upon the very tips of her winter shoes. She lapsed into a profoundly quiet meditative silence for several consecutive seconds, before abruptly hoisting her face to drop a lethal psychological bomb. Hey Lin Shen, could it be that your chaotic persona is actually harboring a severe unhinged mommy complex? Your individual qualities and societal metrics are exceptionally elite. So why on earth did your asset passionately resolve to lock down a relationship with me? On a mommy complex. My guy, it's not like I'm fundamentally lacking a biological mother. I was thoroughly, utterly amused by her wildly unexpected psychological interrogation. Furthermore, analyzing her flawless, age-defying visual aesthetics. If she claimed to be several years younger than my own persona, absolutely no one would dare question reality. Su Wan-an, let me be explicitly clear, I do not harbor a mommy complex. I harbor an absolute unhinged obsession for you, and given how profoundly magnificent your existence is, it is completely mathematically normal for people to fall desperately in love with your asset. Her beautiful eyelashes fluttered softly as her emotional guard downshifted, staring directly into the absolute depths of my pupils, before abruptly hoisting herself onto her tiptoes to violently crash her lips straight against mine. She subsequently retreated with lightning velocity, leaving my consciousness entirely paralyzed and failing to process the microsecond. My ultimate untouchable dream goddess had literally initiated a proactive, aggressive kiss on my persona. I stood entirely frozen on the pavement like an absolute brain-dead mannequin, while she observed my paralyzed state with a highly flustered, visibly panicked facial expression, quickly blurting out, I am profoundly sorry. That was an entirely reckless, highly inappropriate transgression on my part. The exact millisecond my consciousness forcefully snapped back into reality, I desperately extended my arms to lock her silhouette against my chest, aggressively firing back a counter kiss. Her mouth still retained the lingering, intoxicating essence of that hard candy, allowing a subtle, hyper-addictive sweet peach aroma to completely colonize my oral cavity, causing my entire nervous system to experience a violent euphoric high. Su Wan-an, I am formally demanding that your asset executes these reckless transgressions significantly more often moving forward. In absolute reality, my soul is profoundly obsessed with her taking the dominant proactive offensive, as endless cascades of brilliant fireworks exploded violently across the dark winter sky. I felt an identical, high-stakes fireworks display detonating straight inside my brain. That catastrophic mental explosion was none other than my exponentially expanding, hopeless, romantic brain rot. Lin Shen, I am deeply, profoundly grateful for your presence. Today has filled my entire soul with pure, unadulterated happiness. She locked her serene, mesmerizing eyes onto my form, softly articulating her thoughts. There is absolutely zero mandate for gratitude. My own persona is likewise floating in a state of pure euphoria. An ecstatic reality so profoundly beautiful that it feels exactly like an unattainable, surreal dream. However, this pristine, high-tier chapter of absolute happiness failed to maintain its longevity for very long, as the peaceful harmony was violently fractured by a highly uninvited toxic intruder. Su Wan-an's legendary corporate heir ex-boyfriend Li Wenshu had somehow manipulated his vast societal connections to successfully track down my exact coordinate. His facial expression was overflowing with pure unadulterated condescension, his entire physical form aggressively draped in loud, obnoxious luxury designer brand logos, exuding the unshakable confidence of a man holding all the winning cards. Hey Lin Shen, you cannot seriously be brain-dead enough to believe that Su Wan-an harbors genuine romantic affection toward a weakling like you. I was completely, utterly speechless. Listen here, my guy. A premium, high-tier ex-partner is structurally supposed to mimic the behavior of a literal corpse by staying entirely silent. Exactly what kind of pathetic, clownish soap opera is your asset attempting to perform right now? He let out a highly dismissive, arrogant sneer, directing a highly condescending glance at my form. Back in the day, I was the absolute definitive party who initiated the breakup. My strategic blueprint demanded that she join forces with my persona to co-manage the massive Wanhee empire. Yet she exhibited a toxic, incredibly stubborn obsession with remaining a low-tier high school educator. Your ignorant asset is completely oblivious to the reality, aren't you? Throughout the entire 4-year duration following our official separation, her intensely guarded soul has fundamentally never engaged in another romantic relationship. She happens to be an individual who is catastrophically starved of genuine affection, coupled with the undeniable reality that my asset serves as her absolute first love. The absolute microsecond I initiate a strategic U-turn and signal my desire to reconcile, she will unconditionally execute a full retreat straight back into my waiting embrace. I stood entirely paralyzed, completely oblivious to this classified historical data. However, evaluating the actual chessboard reality was entirely different from his delusional narrative. Ever since my official graduation, I had been covertly tracking Soo Won-an's low-profile social media account. She would occasionally broadcast sparse, fragmented glimpses of her everyday life onto her feed. Throughout the entire duration of those 4 years, I operated exactly like a shadow-dwelling stalker, viciously digesting every solitary digital footprint she left behind, analyzing each post hundreds of times over. It was a stroke of absolute supreme luck that the platform didn't possess a profile visitor tracking feature, and an even greater blessing that my screaming internal longing for her made zero external acoustic noise. While my soul secretly celebrated the glorious reality that her relationship status remained strictly single, I simultaneously drowned in a sea of intense paranoia regarding whether she was simply trapped in a state of terminal longing for her ex. Exactly what kind of tactical narrative is your clownish asset attempting to achieve by leaking this data to me? If the two of your personas were truly harboring such an unbreakable mutual fixation for one another, then considering neither of you suffered a literal biological expiration throughout those 4 entire years, exactly why did you fail to execute a romantic reboot? You also tell. My elite family lineage aggressively thrust a toxic arranged political marriage directly onto my life. But my asset possesses an absolute visceral hatred for the arrangement. He let out a heavy dramatic sigh, muttering his high society justification. Oh, I see how it is. So your ultimate blueprint is to force Soo Won-an to occupy the pathetic slot of a backup option or a literal side piece. I let out a fiercely mocking, aggressive sneer. The absolute microsecond my corporate divorce is legally finalized, I will deploy a full-scale offensive to reclaim her heart and lock her down forever. He fiercely gnashed his teeth together, exhaling a wave of intense hostility, delivering his toxic declaration precisely like a formal, high-stakes declaration of war. Then let me repeat my initial query: exactly what is your strategic intent by broadcasting this to my face? Are you about to pull a classic melodrama stunt by offering me a multi-million-dollar check to abandon her? I casually gestured with my hands, completely unfazed. Our two souls represent the absolute pinnacle of each other's first loves. Our historical separation was strictly an unavoidable casualty dictated by harsh practical circumstances. I refuse to accept the narrative that her heart possesses the capability to completely erase my existence. Hearing his unhinged logic plunged my consciousness into an even deeper state of absolute speechlessness. Exactly why on earth is this corporate clown trying to flex his tragic, deep-seated devotion to me? Are you entirely done projecting your mental illness? I barked, pivoting on my heel to exit the zone. However, Lee Wan-chu's sharp voice violently cut through the atmosphere behind my back to deliver a toxic reminder, Lin Shun. Lest your reckless brain forgets your asset was historically nothing more than Soo Won-an's literal high school student. Are you truly blind to the reality that validating a scandalous relationship with an absolute child like you possesses the radioactive potential to permanently obliterate her entire professional educational career? I chose to completely ghost his pathetic existence, walking away without offering a single microsecond of acknowledgement. The absolute definitive date of February 1st marks the grand official anniversary of our historical romance. He had cryptically fired that final psychological bullet for some entirely unknown manipulative reason. Yet, the exact millisecond those words entered my ears, a catastrophic realization violently detonated inside my brain, unearthing a highly specific, repetitive pattern from the depths of Soo Won-an's social media archive. Without a single exception, on the absolute exact calendar date of February 1st, every single year, her feed would consistently broadcast a solitary, barren snapshot of the empty sky, completely devoid of a single accompanying character or contextual caption. It appears highly probable that her heart truly never achieved absolute liberation from her past relationship. When it comes to the profound primal impact of a first love, exactly who possesses the god-tier emotional strength to completely purge it from their soul? In absolute reality is my own obsessive persona not operating under the exact same toxic, unbreakable fixation. After all, my own soul had been relentlessly obsessing and yearning over her existence for countless agonizing years. Throughout these past few turbulent days, my internal psychological state had been a chaotic absolute wreck. After weighing the situation over and over in my fractured mind, I resolutely concluded that I absolutely needed to hear Suwanan personally deliver the definitive, unfiltered truth straight to my face, navigating blindly along the painfully familiar layout of the city streets. My feet subconsciously guided my dragging physical form straight back to the front entrance of the high school. The iconic unchanged structure of the main academy gate. The classic nostalgic blue and white patterns decorating the students' uniforms. Suddenly, a pair of educators who had just concluded their standard class periods emerged, chatting amiably as they exited through the perimeter gates. Lately, a handful of problematic brats in your homeroom class have been inducing a massive amount of stress correctus. Don't even get me started. The modern generation of kids is proving to be exponentially more defiant and rebellious by the day. They are driving my nervous system absolutely insane 24/7. Hearing their complaints violently triggered a memory from that recent family banquet. Specifically, the casual smiling remark dropped by Suwanan's maternal aunt. There happened to be an intensely rebellious, unhinged punk who inflicted heavy waves of exhausting trouble upon her life. And following that chaotic trial, she resolutely vowed to never occupy the head homeroom position ever again. The crushing weight of that realization instantaneously made me feel like an absolute pathetic clown. Throughout our shared history, it appeared my existence was nothing more than a toxic source of perpetual torment. Back during those high school chapters, Suwan-an must have likewise been completely utterly repulsed and exhausted by a deeply problematic student of my caliber, right? And right there at the main academy gates, two vividly familiar silhouettes abruptly materialized, stepping directly into my line of sight. It was none other than Suwan-an and her high society first love, Lee Wen-shu. The exact nature of their high-stakes dialogue remained entirely hidden from me. But Suwan-an was visibly weeping, desperately clutching the fabric of Lee Wen-shu's expensive designer jacket, exhibiting a broken demeanor that looked exactly like she was intensely begging him. By all logical parameters of romance, I should have aggressively charged forward to fiercely interrogate them. Yet, for some entirely unexplainable reason, an absolute wave of cowardice violently paralyzed my entire being. I aimlessly traversed the asphalt pavement for an eternity, completely losing all track of time, before finally retrieving my smartphone to transmit a strategic digital message to Suwan-an. My soul is suddenly harboring an intense desire to escape on a scenic vacation to Yunnan. The atmospheric climate over there is exceptionally warm and comforting right now. Would your beautiful persona be willing to accompany me on this journey? Her text message flashed back onto my screen with a solitary crisp response. Alright. I aggressively pushed the boundary further, typing, "Can we officially lock in the departure date for February 1st? An agonizingly long, suffocating eternity of silence ticked away. Before her definitive notification finally lit up my display, that specific date is highly inconvenient for my asset. Let us reschedule the excursion for an entirely different block of time." I stared blankly at the luminescent screen, completely paralyzed in a state of absolute shock. It turns out, the ancient proverbs are completely accurate until a human being completely obliterates every shred of lingering hope. Their soul remains fiercely incapable of uttering a final, definitive goodbye. As the passage of time continued to mercilessly drag onward, I honestly could no longer differentiate whether my internal feelings for her were genuine romantic love or a toxic, unbreakable psychological fixation. I navigated along the curb of the bustling highway in an absolute directionless daze for hours, ultimately deciding to duck inside a random dimly lit bar just to secure a place to sit down and brood. The exact millisecond I occupied a seat, I unexpectedly intercepted a highly familiar acquaintance, Hime, who was sitting entirely isolated in a dark corner of the establishment, aggressively drowning her sorrows in pure alcohol. I sharply rapped my knuckles against the polished surface of her table. She hoisted her glazed gaze upward in a complete daze, having clearly consumed a massive volume of alcohol. Whoa, Lin Shen, exactly what brings your chaotic persona to this establishment? I gripped a glass aggressively, downing the burning liquid in a single gulp before muttering, "I just got dumped." She violently slammed her palm onto the table, shrieking, "No way your asset got brutally heartbroken too." Incredible pull-up, let's snap a quick selfie right now and broadcast it to our social media feeds. At least my lonely soul isn't suffering through this absolute misery all by myself. As the words escaped her lips, she frantically hoisted her smartphone and activated the front-facing camera. My consciousness was plunged into an even deeper state of speechlessness. Exactly who were you dating? Why was I left completely in the dark? It was none other than your absolute day one best brother. Wait, what? Exactly when did this covert operation launch? When on earth did the two of your personas officially lock in a romantic connection? How is it mathematically possible that I had zero situational awareness about this? Our official relationship commenced yesterday afternoon. and it violently imploded and dissolved today. She delivered the heartbreaking data with an intensely aggrieved expression. But exactly what was the root cause? I demanded, utterly perplexed. He explicitly requested that my asset retrieve a batch of street-side barbecue skewers from below his apartment building. However, the absolute second I arrived at the designated coordinates, I noticed the vendor's cart was flagrantly obstructing public transit, acting as an illegal street-side operation. So I exercised my civic duty and aggressively ratted them out, forcing the authorities to chase them away. It was only during the subsequent fallout that I unlocked the horrifying intel. That specific barbecue vendor was literally his biological father. Naturally, his old man has now formally vetoed our union, refusing to grant permission for us to be together. You are a literal god-tier tactical disaster of a human being. I watched Aianime desperately downing glass after glass, attempting to drown her crushing sorrow in pure alcohol. And for a fleeting microsecond, the sheer absurdity of her trauma managed to numb the excruciating agony of my own heartbreak. That was until a highly specific, devastatingly familiar phenomenon manifested. A slender, fragile silhouette abruptly materialized directly within my immediate field of vision. Lin Shun, exactly what is the strategic motivation behind your refusal to reply to my digital transmissions? I tilted my head backward, forcing a highly calculated, mocking smirk to plaster across my face. My persona isn't executing a deliberate blackout on your incoming notifications. It is simply that your status in this world is far too monumental, making me realize that whatever low-tier response I formulate would be utterly unworthy of aligning with your prestige. A visible ripple of intense, unadulterated fury flashed deep within Suwan-An's beautiful eyes. She clenched her delicate hands into tight, trembling fists, demanding, Lin Shun, exactly what kind of game are you playing? I casually extended my index finger, pointing directly toward the completely wasted Aianime sitting beside me. Your asset is already well aware of the historical data right. My soul has been hopelessly, desperately infatuated with her ever since our high school chapters. As of right now, our two personas have officially locked in a romantic relationship. The exact millisecond we organize our wedding, we'll be sure to extend an invitation for Teacher Sue to serve as our official marriage witness. Sitting right adjacent to me, the thoroughly intoxicated Aianime nodded in a completely dizzy, incoherent state. Hell yeah! Teacher Sue, your asset absolutely must RSVP and grace our ceremony with your presence. Suwan-An's eyes instantaneously glazed over with a faint crimson rim of unshed tears. She locked her unyielding, piercing gaze directly into my soul. Lin Shun, our official relationship has fundamentally not been dissolved. We have not broken up. Even if we haven't officially broken up, exactly what is the crime in maintaining multiple romantic options on the side? My digital typing speed is exceptionally elite. It's not like I lack the cognitive capacity to manage simultaneous conversations. If your asset lacks the capability to permanently anchor my heart, do not dare use your lips to brand me as a toxic player. I fired every solitary syllable like a lethal razor-sharp projectile designed to pierce through her defense. Throughout this entire chaotic ordeal, I resolutely refused to allow my persona to look pathetic wretched, or reduced to a state of absolute submissive beggary ever again. Teacher Sue, I no longer possess the desire to play the role of your chaotic, rebellious punk. I am formally releasing your soul from my life. I casually waved my hand, dismissing her, simultaneously signaling an absolute definitive conclusion to my agonizingly long era defining unrequited love, and uttered my final goodbye. Perhaps a heartbreaking, bittersweet curtain call is the absolute permanent reality of human existence. It felt exactly like casting away a colossal, suffocating boulder that had heavily anchored my heart, inducing an abrupt, unexpected wave of absolute relief, yet leaving my internal soul feeling completely hollowly desolate. Throughout those subsequent few days, my consciousness remained locked in an absolute fragmented daze, until a chance encounter on the public street brought me face to face with the Academy's physical education instructor. He observed my presence with a highly conflicted expression, completely overflowing with words he desperately hesitated to utter. Teacher Gao, exactly what is troubling your mind? He let out a heavy, deeply pained sigh. Ugh. How on earth did the situation between your asset and Suwan-An deteriorate into such an absolute catastrophe? My mind experienced a flash of absolute bewilderment. Exactly what situation are you referring to? His confusion instantly intensified. She seriously leaked zero intel to your persona. Disclosed exactly what to me? During this recent stretch, the Academy was executing its elite professional title evaluations and merit selections. It was universally recognized as an absolute ironclad lock for her career. Yet out of absolutely nowhere, a nameless saboteur leaked high-tier photographic evidence of your asset and her together. The malicious whistleblower explicitly claimed that the two of your personas had been engaged in an illicit, scandalous affair ever since your student days, as rumors aggressively multiplied across the board. The toxic narrative rapidly colonized the minds of countless individuals. Forget about her securing that elite professional promotion. Her foundational employment is currently facing a catastrophic threat. A massive coalition of student parental figures are actively petitioning the board right now, fiercely demanding that the Aianime leadership permanently terminate her contract and expel her from the campus. Panic violently hijacked my nervous system as I frantically whipped out my smartphone, navigating straight into the Academy's official anonymous forum and discussion boards, the absolute premium breeding ground for toxic campus gossip and character assassination. The absolute most viral thread proudly boasted thousands of highly aggressive toxic comments. Pinned at the absolute apex of the thread were a series of high-definition, intimate snapshots capturing my persona and Suwan-an enjoying our time at the amusement park, strategically paired with a complete data dump of my personal historical academic enrollment records. The overwhelming majority of the user feedback was completely, utterly repulsive and unfit for human eyes, branding her with disgusting labels like an absolute disgrace to the educational profession, and a toxic vixen explicitly grooming her own vulnerable students. Every drop of toxic radioactive sludge was being aggressively and systematically hurled straight at Suwanan's pristine reputation. Teacher Gao, I'm urgently requesting that your asset guide me to see the supreme executive leadership of this academy immediately. This absolute catastrophic nightmare was entirely engineered by my own reckless actions, and my persona is going to aggressively shut it down. Greetings, Director. I am Lin Shun, a former graduate from the historic senior class 349. Regarding the radioactive, highly defamatory rumors circulating about teacher Suwanan, I am here to deliver the absolute definitive clarification. Your asset can proceed to directly activate your smartphone's video recording functionality right this second, as I formally guarantee under oath that every single syllable escaping my lips is the absolute unadulterated truth, and I am entirely prepared to shoulder the full weight of any legal consequences resulting from my declarations. First and foremost, Suwan-an represents the absolute pinnacle of an exceptionally elite, dedicated, and profoundly responsible educator. She has fundamentally never engaged in a single toxic, scandalous action broadcasted by those online trolls. The absolute reality is that my own adolescent persona harbored a massive, intense, unrequited love for her that I never dared to articulate, meaning Teacher Sue was permanently entirely oblivious to my deep-seated internal fixation. Therefore, any radioactive rumors alleging an illicit, inappropriate affair between us are completely mathematically impossible. Secondly, regarding our recent re-encounter in the physical world, it was entirely a twist of cosmic fate, orchestrated strictly by our respective families arranging a blind marriage meeting. It was my own unwilling, obsessed heart that relentlessly initiated a high-stakes, aggressive pursuit of her asset. Every single chapter of this chaotic ordeal is purely the collateral damage of my own selfish, unhinged desires. I am deeply, profoundly remorseful for the immense damage inflicted, and my ultimate mission today is to completely restore teacher Suwan-an's pristine, unblemished reputation. Let us officially conclude this narrative right here. I refuse to let my problematic persona ever serve as a source of exhausting torment in your life again. I drafted a final, intensely personal letter, carefully sliding a crisp $100 bill straight inside the envelope, and formally requested the physical education instructor to securely deliver the packet to Suwan-an. Dear Teacher Sue, I am deeply sorry for utilizing such a raw, unorthodox method to fully expose the hidden architecture of my soul. My original strategic blueprint was to permanently lock this forbidden secret inside the deepest vault of my heart for an eternity. During a suffocatingly hot summer season back when my physical form was merely 16 years old, I stepped out onto the city streets only for a brief lapse in situational awareness to result in my wallet and smartphone being completely stolen. To make the nightmare infinitely worse, a torrential downpour began aggressively punishing the pavement, leaving my vulnerable, stranded persona panicking in absolute directionless circles. Out of nowhere, an exceptionally gentle, breathtakingly beautiful university-age older sister materialized, graciously extending a solitary $100 bill straight into my trembling hands, explicitly instructing my helpless form to secure a taxi safely back to my residential headquarters. I have drowned in a sea of absolute agonizing regret every single day since that fateful encounter, fiercely loathing my past cowardice for failing to aggressively secure her personal mobile contact digits. In the subsequent months, I routinely patrolled that exact identical alleyway hoping to intercept her silhouette. Yet cosmic synchronicity failed to grant our paths a secondary convergence. However, flashing forward through several chapters of time, she miraculously manifested as my official high school homeroom educator. Yet her cognitive memory bank retained absolutely zero trace of my historic existence. Teacher Sue, I am extending my deepest, most absolute gratitude to your beautiful soul. The historic financial debt has officially been fully reimbursed to your asset. I am profoundly apologetic that this transaction does not include any accumulated financial interest. It is highly probable that your conscious mind remains completely oblivious to the reality. But that day, your flawlessly gentle, jade-like ethereal aura was instantly, permanently seared straight into the absolute core of my beating heart. becoming the defining indelible masterpiece stamped across the entirety of my adolescent youth. I lacked the absolute courage to articulate my truth, nor was I legally permitted to speak because I was absolutely terrified. Paralyzed by the horrific mental image of your asset intensely despising me or looking at my form with utter revulsion, while simultaneously fearing that after a few fleeting chapters of time had ticked away, your consciousness wouldn't even retain the basic linguistic arrangement of my literal name. Confronted by that paralyzing anxiety, I deliberately engineered a chaotic, highly rebellious persona, solely to aggressively hijack your professional attention and force your eyes onto my form. Looking back, the entire tactical execution was completely, utterly childish. I am profoundly, deeply sorry for inflicting so much exhausting psychological trouble upon your life. Exactly what is the ultimate definition of an unrequited secret love? A sudden violent downpour is currently punishing the world outside the window pane. Yet your beautiful eyes are looking absolutely everywhere, except at me. My eyes are locked onto the downpour, entirely avoiding any visual alignment with the serene universe of Suwanan. On our historic Academy graduation day, I secretly presented your asset with a pristine bouquet of white hyacinths. A floral manifestation perfectly mirroring a forbidden, deeply repressed affection that never dared to seek validation. In the chaotic aftermath of our separation, I formally booked a series of intense clinical consultations with a certified psychologist. The medical expert explicitly noted that throughout the complex psychological dynamics of adolescent interpersonal interactions, our developing minds possess a massive hyper-vulnerable tendency to misinterpret pure aesthetic admiration and aspirational longing as genuine romance. In absolute objective reality, this specific cognitive phenomenon fundamentally fails to constitute authentic high-tier romantic love. I spent endless agonizing epochs relentlessly brainwashing my own consciousness, desperately echoing that this was absolutely not love. It wasn't, yet, despite crossing paths with an elite roster of exceptionally gorgeous high-tier females throughout these lonely years, my internal romantic engine remained completely paralyzed, completely incapable of registering even a microsecond of genuine interest. Whenever curious acquaintances interrogated my persona regarding my exact ideal psychological archetype in a partner, my voice would instantly subconsciously blurt out, an elegant, highly sophisticated older sister who commands a slight age advantage over me, I suppose. It was only through a brutal, retrospective analysis that I unlocked the ultimate truth. I never actually harbored a structural fixation for the mature sister archetype. The mathematical reality is that my soul has simply been helplessly, terminally obsessed with you and you alone. It feels exactly as though my entire existence has been perpetually locked in a toxic cycle of trying to purge you from my system, while simultaneously remaining anchored in an eternal submissive state of waiting for your silhouette to return. I should have never allowed my mental composition to fracture into such a pathetic, disorganized state. My core psychological architecture is fiercely uncompromising, dangerously obsessive, and borderline unhinged. My ultimate internal drive desperately resisted the concept of allowing your magnificent existence to slip through my fingers. Yet a romantic trajectory only possesses actual divine significance when it represents a fierce mutual convergence of two souls charging toward each other. Your asset has formally executed the choice you deemed entirely logical and correct for your personal timeline, leaving my departing form with no alternative choices other than to officially manifest a prayer for your ultimate happiness, Suwan-an. My soul is profoundly grateful to your asset for gifting my life such a breathtaking, utterly magnificent illusion of temporary joy. On the absolute calendar date of February 1st, Suwanan's official social media channel predictably broadcasted its annual digital footprint, a solitary barren snapshot capturing the vast emptiness of the sky. With absolute cold finality, my thumb descended onto the screen, permanently executing an unfollow command. I aggressively deactivated my smartphone display, plunging it into total darkness, and securely strapped myself into the cabin of a high-altitude aircraft charting a direct flight path to the paradise of Dali. A legendary destination where the atmospheric conditions mirror a perpetual eternal spring, its vibrant floral essence intoxicating the human senses. I collapsed into an exceptionally heavy, profoundly deep state of absolute therapeutic slumber. Awakening on the subsequent morning, I advanced straight into the glorious radiance of the rising sun to casually navigate the sprawling local flower market. Out of nowhere, a subtle, highly delicate mist of gentle rain began silently descending from the heavens. My packing strategy had failed to secure a personal umbrella. Yet my physical form experienced absolutely zero sensation of biting cold or discomfort, while traversing through endless breathtaking corridors overflowing with massive vibrant mountain ranges of freshly harvested flora. A young teenage boy clad in a classic high school uniform approached the shop, proprietor eagerly announcing, "Sir, my asset urgently requires the acquisition of a custom pristine arrangement of white hyacinths." The elder merchant let out a highly amused, warm-hearted chuckle, playfully teasing the adolescent, "Oh ho! It appears highly evident that a specific beautiful girl at your academy has successfully locked down a secret unrequited monopoly over your young heart." The The young boy's facial complexion instantaneously flushed into a brilliant, intensely crimson hue. That exact microsecond violently unearthed a vivid high-definition mirror image of my own historical adolescent persona. A soft, nostalgic smile instinctively graced my lips, and I casually signaled the merchant with a friendly wave of my hand. "Excuse me, boss." My persona would likewise appreciate the acquisition of a matching arrangement of white hyacinths. Actually, let us upgrade that order to a magnificent custom bouquet of premium crimson roses instead. An exceptionally soft, hyper-elegant voice suddenly resonated like a divine melody gently vibrating straight against my eardrum, simultaneously accompanied by the sudden manifestation of a pristine, transparent umbrella dome shielding the crown of my head. I sharply pivoted my neck only for my eyes to instantly lock onto the ethereal silhouette of Suwanan standing right adjacent to my form, plunging my entire conscious mind into a state of absolute, unadulterated disbelief. I remained completely paralyzed until her delicate hands gently purposefully pressed the meticulously wrapped bundle of radiant roses straight into my grasp. Her other hand delicately intertwined with mine, securely anchoring our forms under the transparent umbrella as we exited the market. Lin Shun, my conscious mind has fundamentally never forgotten your historic existence. It is simply that, during our secondary convergence, my official societal role was established as your classroom educator. Since your own persona chose to leave that past memory unuttered, I likewise maintained an absolute professional silence. In objective reality, extending that financial lifeline back then was nothing more than a momentary act of basic human decency. And my heart has never for a single microsecond classified your persona as a source of exhausting trouble. As for your chaotic wave of adolescent defiance, analyzing it through a modern lens, I actually found your antics to be profoundly endearing and cute. However, as the subsequent chapters unfolded, my thoughts began routinely drifting back toward your form. During the definitive timeline of your graduation, you appeared heavily burdened by an intense unspoken internal crisis. Yet my awareness remained completely locked in the dark regarding the absolute root cause. That painful oversight forced my soul to conclude that I was a thoroughly incompetent, unaccomplished educator, which serves as the absolute definitive catalyst for why I permanently abdicated the position of head homeroom teacher. Suwan-an steadily anchored the umbrella over our heads, her mesmerizing eyes lowering slightly to lock directly onto my frozen form. I am profoundly, deeply sorry. Teacher Su, my pathetic persona should have never allowed myself to cross the boundary and fall desperately in love with you. I softly articulated the words, my voice trembling with raw vulnerability. In absolute reality, my own existence represents a profoundly monotonous, unextraordinary human specimen. My entire life trajectory has been systematically executed according to a rigid, predetermined blueprint, devoid of any supreme explosive waves of joy, yet equally insulated from the absolute depths of crippling despair. That was, until a specific, fiercely passionate young man abruptly crashed straight into the center of my universe, delivering a soul-stirring vow that his ultimate mission was to ensure my asset experienced absolute, unadulterated happiness every single day. Lin Shun, I am extending my deepest, most absolute gratitude to your soul. Navigating this world alongside your persona has injected a level of pure radiant happiness into my life that I never thought possible. Lin Shun, let me be explicitly, definitively clear, my heart is profoundly, desperately in love with you. Suwan-an's raw confession descended syllable by syllable, violently shattering and reshaping the absolute core of my beating heart, making the entire atmosphere feel exactly like an unattainable, hyper-surreal dream. As the echoes of her voice washed over my consciousness, a profound, overwhelming ache of emotional catharsis flooded my entire chest. But if that is the absolute truth, why did the intel suggest that your soul failed to achieve absolute closure regarding your high society ex-boyfriend? The narrative explicitly stated that the sole reason he permanently abstained from entering any subsequent romantic relationships was due to your lingering fixation. Furthermore, on that specific afternoon, my own eyes personally witnessed the intense interaction between the two of your personas at the academy gate. Hearing my confusion, she frantically shook her head, her expression overflowing with an urgent, desperate need to clarify the reality. On that definitive date, his toxic persona manifested solely to aggressively beg for an absolute romantic reconciliation. My asset delivered an immediate, unconditional veto, refusing to grant his request under any circumstances. Confronted by my absolute rejection, he brandished those candid snapshots capturing our intimate moments at the amusement park as a high-stakes weapon for blackmail, viciously declaring a formal ultimatum that he would unleash a full-scale offensive to permanently sabotage your entire life and career. At that exact microsecond, an overwhelming wave of paralyzing fear hijacked my nervous system. God damn it! If my oblivious mind had unlocked that critical intelligence back during the actual event, I would have aggressively charged across that pavement and unleashed an absolute god-tier physical beatdown straight upon his clownish face. The absolute second our historic relationship dissolved, he instantly executed a strategic pivot to legally marry into another elite lineage. Exactly what kind of brain-dead fool would harbor a terminal unbreakable fixation for a toxic piece of human trash like that? Throughout the entire duration of these subsequent years, my mental capacity has been entirely consumed by managing my maternal aunt's critical medical crisis, leaving zero room to entertain romance. And honestly, my soul harbored absolutely zero expectations or hope when it came to the male species. Wait, but isn't the absolute calendar date of February 1st universally recognized as the grand anniversary of your historic first love? February 1st represents the absolute devastating anniversary of the exact day my biological parents suffered their fatal catastrophe. In absolute reality, ever since that horrific, life-shattering accident violently tore them away from this world, my traumatized nervous system has been paralyzed by an absolute visceral phobia of ever stepping foot inside a high-altitude aircraft. Hearing the crushing weight of her hidden trauma, my conscious mind was instantaneously plunged into a state of absolute paralyzed speechlessness. Then exactly how did your asset manage to arrive at these coordinates? Suwan-an let out a soft, beautifully radiant smile, hoisting her delicate hand to gently tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. By enduring a grueling 20-hour train journey that cut straight through massive mountains, rushing rivers, and endless seas of clouds, traversing thousands of miles under the shifting canopy of clouds and moonlight, solely to aggressively pursue a definitive, joyful convergence with the absolute love of my life. The gentle street-side mist began slicing diagonally against the smooth surface of our transparent umbrella dome, as I fiercely locked my arms around the absolute definitive joy of my adolescent youth. The historic year number 1 of Suwan-an deeply loving Lin Shun simultaneously marked the absolute 7th year of Lin Shun blindly, relentlessly loving her. In the subsequent chapters of our timeline, Suwan-an formally resigned from her employment at the academy, strategically pivoting to pursue her elite doctoral degree. She disclosed that her historical choice to enter the educational profession was executed strictly to fulfill the absolute final dying wishes of her biological parents. Before much more time could tick away, our two personas officially legalized our union and tied the knot. I casually initiated a dialogue interrogating her on whether her soul desired to welcome a baby into our universe. I was intensely aware that deep within her core psychology, she harbored a powerful deep-seated longing for an authentic family sanctuary. She registered a slight wave of surprise at my query, murmuring, "Considering your youthful age bracket, shouldn't your asset be harboring an intense, unyielding craving for absolute freedom?" In the historical chapters, that was absolutely the case. Back then, the concept of marriage felt exactly like a suffocating terminal graveyard, and offspring were viewed strictly as a catastrophic, life-altering anchor dragging me down. Yet as of right now, every single time my physical form returns to our residential headquarters and witnesses her maintaining our shared space in such a flawlessly organized, profoundly warm manner, a person who historically operated as an intensely quiet, isolated soul has miraculously evolved into a beautifully expressive individual who radiates constant laughter and conversation. It suddenly makes me realize that entering holy matrimony is actually an exceptionally magnificent milestone. Our future genetic offspring will undoubtedly be profoundly, completely adorable, and her elite persona will definitively implement a flawless educational upbringing upon them. Speaking of our academic history, I tightly locked my arm around a certain someone's slender waist, playfully demanding a high-stakes interrogation. Exactly how many agonizing hours did your asset ruthlessly force my brain to memorize the ancient preface to the Prince of Teng's Pavilion? She shot a highly calculated tsundere glare directly into my eyes. Seriously. Exactly why is your petty persona digging up ancient prehistoric history right now? The grip of my hand instantly tightened, violently hauling her soft frame straight against my chest as I growled, "If you fail to recite it flawlessly, 0. Sleep shall be granted tonight." To my absolute utter bewilderment, she seamlessly unleashed every single syllable without omitting a solitary character, completely executing the complex historical text without a microsecond of hesitation or stuttering. Incredible, as expected of a historically elite top-tier educator of the masses. I instantly rolled over, pinning her delicate physical form securely beneath my weight. Suwan-an, for the duration of this specific evening, my persona shall officially assume the executive role of the educator, while your asset occupies the submissive slot of the student, as I conduct a deep dive seminar on an advanced curriculum. Her breath hitched as she frantically demanded, "Exactly what specific subject are we lecturing? Advanced human muscular anatomy." A certain breathtaking individual's facial complexion instantaneously flushed into a state of absolute hyper-bashful shyness. I leaned my entire physical form down, pressing our boundaries closer. Teacher Su. Throughout our past chapters, your asset was responsible for instructing my mind on how to digest literature. As of right now, it is my absolute turn to instruct your soul on the divine art of cultivating life.